Hello and welcome to this presentation called Data at a Distance. My name is Russell Cross and I'm a speech-language therapist employed full-time by PRC Saltillo in the US. I'm also the co-author of the Realize Language website, along with my colleague Paul Andres, an OT in Germany. During the next 50 minutes or so, I'm going to talk to you about how to analyze vocabulary data that's collected remotely on an AAC device, and also how to enhance your analyses by using some common third-party software packages. So let's start by taking a look at something called automated data logging. What is automated data logging? Well, this is the automatic collection of data by a device or software, and typically the contents of that data are event stamps. So we have dates, times, actions, so that we know what's happened and when. And automated data logging is typically client driven. So what you're seeing here is what the client is doing on a device. Now, there are some limitations of automated data logging, so let's look at the sort of things that we can't do with this. The first is that there's an absence of input from communication partners. So what we're seeing is just some raw data, but we're not seeing what's going on at the other side of the conversation. Next is there's an absence of the multimodal elements. So we're not seeing any gestures, facial expressions, or any of these non-spoken events. There's also an absence of social and geographic content. We don't always know when we see the data where somebody was and what they were doing. Sometimes we do, but other times we can't know that. And there's also a need explicitly for modeling or marking modeling when that takes place. And there's also the potential to misuse this as proof of ability, or in some cases proofs of inability. So if you're evaluating someone and using log data, you have to be very wary about what you're seeing there and how you interpret what you're seeing there. Because, if you see an absence of a lot of communication, that doesn't actually necessarily mean your client isn't a candidate for AAC. It just means that there's a limit on the data. So you've got to be real careful about the data and the analysis. And hopefully over the next 50 minutes, you're going to be able to understand a little more about how we might be able to better interpret the data that we see. Given that there are some limitations, what is the value of using ADL? Well, first of all, we can track narrative from 24/7, just leave it turned on all the time, or we can use it as a sampling technique, and we can just take snippets of language at different times. A little bit like doing a multi-baseline study. What we can do is see time data, so we can actually fairly easily see when a device is and is not being used, and that's very useful to us. We can also take a look at how the language is being generated, so we could be seeing how somebody is spelling something, or whether they're using word prediction, or whether they're using pre-stored words, phrases, sentences. That's all sitting in the data. And of course, obviously it's tracking vocabulary use, so we can see the actual words that are being used and make inferences based on that data. It also tracks performance against itself, so we're not using this to match the client's performance against some standards or norms. This is not a normative system, but we can look at what my client did this week and measure it against what he did the week before, or even the month before, or the year before. Now, before we take a look at the Realize Language site itself or the tools that are available to you, I also want to take a look at some third-party software here that I found incredibly useful in order to enhance the data. So I can use the data that I see at the Realize site and also then transfer that to other pieces of software for helping in my analyses. And so we're going to look at some really common suites of software here with Microsoft Office. We're going to take a look at Google Documents and the Google Suite that we have. And we're also going to look at something called LibreOffice, and we'll see with each of these how they differ very slightly, but also how similar they are in what they can do. So let's start by taking a look quickly at Microsoft Office. This of course comes in both online and desktop versions and available for Windows and iOS. And you'll see that the components that we're going to be using primarily in the evaluations that we're looking at are Word and Excel, a word processor and a spreadsheet. The thing about Microsoft Office is that typically you have to pay for it, but there is a free version that I won't be looking at. But you'll find that the other thing is that Office software is very, very common across all platforms, and many people are very familiar with the Microsoft Office. Google gives us some similar features and operations to Microsoft Office, but the good news about this one is also that it's free, and we will be looking at what are called Google Docs and Google Sheets, which are the equivalent to Word and Excel. This is online for Windows, iOS, and Chrome, so it's pretty much multi-platform. And then we're also going to take a look at something called LibreOffice, which is a downloadable software. This has desktop versions for Windows and iOS. Also has a version for Linux if you are a Linux user. And the equivalent here is they have the Writer software and the Calc software. And so we're going to take a look at all those there to look at how we can use them with our Realize data. So let's go back and look just at what is Realize Language. Well, it's an online web-based service that gives parents and professionals different ways to monitor, measure, and maximize child's use of augmentative and alternative speech device. And what we do here is we collect data on the device, and then that data can be uploaded to the website and used to create reports. And that uploading can be either manual or automatic, and by automatic I mean via Wi-Fi. So if you have access to Wi-Fi, this can upload data on a daily basis. But if you don't have Wi-Fi, that's okay. You can still manually take data from a device and load it up manually to the website. All PLCs, utility devices and apps have this logging capability. So whatever device you have there, you will be able to use it. And how is that data actually visualized? Well, it's possible to generate word clouds, bar charts, word lists, and even calendars showing time and frequency of device use. And by turning these text-based data log files into pictures, it makes them much easier to understand. And what can I do with this Realize website? Well, as I mentioned earlier, we can track progress and communication change over time. We can compare different aspects of communication, such as spelling versus word prediction versus pre-stored sentences versus words. We can create a dashboard summary of performance, and you'll see that fairly shortly. And also we can share that information with everyone on the team, either by sharing documents that we can create, or there's actually a feature within Realize Language that means that multiple people who have accounts can share data or access to data with other people who have Realize accounts. And we can therefore customize reports that anyone can understand, even those with limited knowledge of AAC. So let's now take a brief overview of the tools that are available on the Realize Language website. When you first go to realizelanguage.com, you'll come to the home screen like this, and this is where you can find information about the system. There's some information for professionals and for parents, information about training, resources. There are FAQs and the support area, and also the ability to see a very short video here and also to sign up for a free trial before committing to taking out a subscription. And what we can do here is go to the login, and at the login I'm going to use my Realize Language email and password here to get into my account. And when I'm in my account, you'll see here that I have a number of test people here. And I'm going to go and choose this client called Jacob Test. And when I do that, I'm taken to what's called the dashboard. The dashboard here gives me an overview of the current week of my client's data. And you'll notice up here that there is some information about the week ending. And you'll also notice that the week ending here is for 2014. This is some very, very old data, and this is data that I use really just for training and teaching purposes. But if we were tracking in real time with a client, we'd actually be looking at dates here for the end of this week. So this is going to show you current data, and it just gives you some information here, a quick overview of what's happening. So you will see that we have a log that tells you when the device is and is not being used with dates and times. There's also an overview of the words that have been used this week, and you'll probably notice here that some words are big and some are little, and if you've guessed that the big ones are used a lot and the little ones are used not so much, then you've worked out what this is all about. There's some figures here in terms of the use based on 15-minute intervals to give you a rough idea of time that's being applied in communicating. And also there's a section called the analysis section, where you'll see all the words have been broken down by parts of speech. With this client, you'll see that there's a predominance of nouns over any of the other parts of speech here. And what I'm going to do here is just to click a little button that's called Generate Report, and I shall generate the report. Something happens. Report generation complete, and now we're back to where we were. So we'll come back to what happened when I press that one. You can find your way to different parts of the sites, and at different parts of the sites you can click and see different information. So I'm going to click on the Words tab at the top here, or I could press at the side here on this thing called a widget, but I'm going to go to Words, and we're now in a different section of the display, and we have some other little tools down the side here. But you'll see here, first of all, I've got a word cloud. The nice thing about a word cloud is it's very easy to understand what's happening with my client's data. I have a top 10 option, which tells me, as you would guess, the top 10 words that are being used at the moment by my client. There's an A to Z or an A to Z, depending on where you're listening. And this gives me an overview of all the words that my client has used within a particular time period. And there's a button here called List, which gives me a list, or I should say multiple lists, which is different ways of looking at the different types of vocabulary and how they're being used. So real quickly at the moment, what you're seeing here are things called known words that are pre-stored. And what that basically means is you're seeing words here that my client has generated by pressing buttons where the word has been stored as a whole unit. And they're called known because the system recognizes that these are real English words, and the system itself has a vocabulary of over 100,000 words, so it's pretty good at recognizing what are known words. It may sometimes fail, and it will also track what are called unknown words. You'll see I click there to change to unknown, and what happens when you see unknown words are you're looking at things that I call the 3 Ps: people, places, and products. And the reason that we don't have people, places, and products in our huge 100,000 word database is because there are so many names of people, places, and products that if we did that, the database would be so big that it would become almost unmanageable. So what we do is we just leave those out, but you can see they're here: Walmart, Beethoven, Washington, they are there. And I can toggle back to the known words. And in fact, I can see known and unknown words. So you can play with these toggles here to see the data. And in fact, we can also switch to see spelled words. So now what we're doing is we're looking at words that have been spelled out, and you'll see here that we're given words and frequencies. So these are a quick look there at the sort of tools we have here: cloud, top 10, A to Z, and lists. The other section I now want to quickly look at is a thing called the analysis section. And in the analysis section, first thing you'll see here are part of speech, and you'll see predominance of nouns, then go to verbs and pronouns. And something to note here that I did not mention, but I will mention now, is that at the top here, you have the facility to change the date range that you're looking at for the data. So this is a small data set, and my small data set goes from July the 5th to July 15th within 1 month of the year. But if you have a client that has a much larger data set, at any time you can click on here and have a new start date, a new end date, and be looking at a particular slot of time. So if I wanted to look at my client's data for a particular week, say the first week of January of this year, I can just go back into here and I can go and change this to January the 1st through to, say, January the 31st. And then when I load this up, it's going to load up the data for that period and show me the data specific to then. I shall not do that, because if I do that now, it won't work because I don't have any data in that time period, so it'll be blank. But you get the idea there. So you can always change the date range here. Word groups and managed goals are an interesting feature, and I'll start by going to manage goals. And what that allows me to do is to select a set of target vocabulary items. And this is the default set of vocabulary items. It's based on a list of 300 core words, core and fringe words, that have been developed over the years by a clinician called Gail Van Tatenhove. And Gail has used this list for many years with her clients. And if you were to teach these 300 words to somebody, they would be pretty communicative. So Gail let us use this as our default list, and it's in there. And by setting first the goals that you want to get, you can then go to another button called Word Groups, which will now show you your client's data as it relates to that set of goals. And so what you're now looking at here are all the words that my client has used that were in that set of goals. And so you can see I and about and after and big and cold. You'll see not only are they outlined and put in color, but the size also reflects some sort of frequency. And in fact, if I want to home in on a particular word group, I can click, for example, and see pronouns. So I can see how well my client is doing in terms of producing the words that are in that 300 words and the pronouns specifically. So what's good here is that I can see where they're getting it, but I can also see where there is no evidence of a word being used. And again, it doesn't mean they don't know the word, doesn't mean they don't understand it. It just means they have not demonstrated the word using their device. So I can go back and set up the situations where that can happen. If I go back to managing goals, I can actually set up other lists. If I click on here, I can now either type in or paste in a new list and create a whole new set of targets. And once you've put those in there, you'll see now I've actually got some lists that I created earlier. So you'll see I have the Banaji list, the Clendon list, and these are lists that come from the AAC literature, PRC 100 today. So if I click on that one, I've simply now changed my targets to a different list of words. So let's see how my client does against this list. Clearly doing a lot better on this one. If I click on pronouns, and now you'll see my client's got all the pronouns that are in that list except for the one. So I could go back with my client and take a look at seeing if I can elicit the word mine to make sure that they've also got that within their expressive vocabulary. So as you click between these two, the word groups and manage goals, this is a pair of tools that allows you to track vocabulary use over time against a specific target that you've got for your client. The log section here is very much the same as what we saw on that home screen, but it's a little more detailed, because now what I can do is not only can I see here the words that are being used, but I can step through week by week. And you'll see here that there was nothing in that week because I only have a short piece of data. But I can go to a particular time and click, and then it's going to show me over on the right-hand side the vocabulary that's being used. And not only will it show me, but it gives me lots of details in here. And in fact, if I change the look of that by using some of these buttons just at the top right here, I'm going to do something called the full layout. You'll see here that there's an awful lot of information. It tells me, for example, that this was, let's see here, I want. SEM means it was using a sequence, so I know that they pressed a couple of buttons to get that. They did that at 8, 12, 23 seconds, and that the word to, ACT tells me that they were using something in what's called an activity row, depending on the device you're using. And then they followed that up by the word go, home, SEM. Also, I can see if I go down here that they did spelling, and you'll see there's an awful lot of information here, and maybe too much information. So I can always choose to strip that information down, so now it's much a little cleaner here. And in fact, what I can do is go to this here, which is really, really simple. So I can actually see words within context, and we'll come back a little later to look at how we can use this to work on things like mean length of utterance. So the log gives me information there about what is happening, and I'm going to go here to reports, and what you'll see here, if you remember right at the beginning, I clicked on a button to say generate a report, and this is where it is. This is the report, and this is in a PDF format, so I'm going to click view. Now at this point, when I click view, it depends on how you've set up your browser as to how that then appears. Mine will download it, so it's going to download the document to here, and then I click and I can open it. So you'll see here now we have a PDF of the week, and that's a quick report that you can create. But also we can look at reports we've generated previously. So I've left a couple here from earlier last week, and here's one. Oh, here we go, the word groups. I'm going to view this one, and this time what we're going to do is it's going to save it not as a PDF, but as a PNG, and a PNG is a graphic file. I'm going to click. And now it's opened up a picture here that I took of a client against that. Remember the list I had of Gail's vocabulary? So here's how my client did, and I just took a quick picture of it. And the nice thing about any of these is that I can copy these and paste them into a different report. Again, we'll see that very, very shortly. So I'll close that one down. So these reports are specific to that client, and they sit in the reports section here. But they're going to sit there as long as I like till I delete them, but you can then always go back. So as you build up some of these pictures from your client, you're collecting them here in the reports section. So I'm going to go back to the overview button here, and what I want you to take away from that is just what you've seen is a quick overview of the sort of features and functions that are in here, and I encourage you later to go back, and if you have not tried this, go and explore the system and try it out and see what you can do. There are other features in here that I haven't shown you, but I just want you to get a flavor, first of all, for some of the very common things that people use in order to analyze the data. And so the next thing we're going to do is to move on and look at not just the data that's here, but how I can then use the data that's in here along with those third-party softwares in order to do some more detailed analysis of the vocabulary. The first thing I'm going to do here is to get myself a word count, and I'm going to do this by going to the word section and then to the A to Z. And you'll see here with the A to Z, I've got a listing, as I say, of all the words my client has used. So what I'm going to do is to click just before the first, scroll down to just after the last. So I've highlighted all of the words and right click to get a copy. So I've now copied those into my clipboard, and now I'm going to go to, for example, Google Drive, and I'm going to open up a new Google Doc. In Google Docs, I'm going to choose Edit, and I'm going to paste without formatting. And what you'll see is it now takes all those words and puts them into a document. But one of the nice things about Google Docs is in the Tools section, they have this word count. So if I click on the word count tool, it tells me I have 513 words. So I'm going to say OK, and now I'm going to write 513 words. So I've got myself a word count here using my Google Doc. However, what I could also have done is the same with Microsoft Word. So here's a Microsoft Word document. I shall paste without formatting. And in Word, you'll find that the number of words is actually way down in the bottom left. And this one says there are 513 words. What a surprise. So I'm going to put 513 words in my document there. And as a final example, this is LibreOffice. Here's the LibreOffice opening screen, and this time I'm going to use the Writer document. So that's opened up a document. Same again, edit, paste, unformatted. And this one, a bit like Word, pops down at the bottom, 513 words. There we go. So that was just an example of how we can use these different pieces of software in order to collect that data and get ourselves a word count. The next thing I'm going to do is to try and get hold of some of that frequency data. So not only can I count the individual words that are used, but now I'm going to try and count all the instances of the words that are used. So once more, I go into the words section, but now I'm going to go into my list. Now in the list here, as you'll see, I'm looking at all the known words that have been pre-stored, but I'm not seeing all the unknown words that are pre-stored. If you remember here, it's things like people's names, etc. But what I'm going to do is to open up both the known and unknown for pre-stored, because what I want to see here are how many pre-stored words not only are being used, but also with what frequency. So you'll see that I can click and highlight just as I did before. So now I've clicked and highlighted all the words and the numbers, and I'm going to do right click and copy as I did before. Start with my Google Drive, and this time I'm going to do the Sheets document. This time it's opened up a little spreadsheet for me. I'll click on the first tile here and then paste special, and I'm going to put paste values. And so now what it's done is you'll see I have a list here, and we could put some headings, but you'll see I've got the frequency score and I've also got the word. And once you're in a spreadsheet, that means you can do some interesting things with the numbers. So I'm going to scroll down just to the bottom of my first one here and put in a formula. And the first thing I'm going to do is to put an equal sign. And what a surprise, the nice thing about Google Sheets here is it makes a guess at what are you trying to put in here. And it says here, are you trying to get the sum of all the values from A1 to A88? And the answer is, oh, crikey, yes I am. So I'm going to click it. And then enter. And it's now added up all the instances of the usage of all those vocabulary items. I could do the same here. Put it equals, and it's guessing again, do I want that? Yes. And enter. And in fact, I could click on this square here and do a control copy on my keyboard. And then if I click and paste, what it does is click and paste that formula. So what it's now done is calculated all the instances there of usage of a word. And so the last thing I'm going to do here is equals, type in sum, and it's not sure what I want to do here, so I'm just going to do equals sum and then a little bracket. And now I'm going to click on my first number, just scroll across, there we go. I just clicked all the way across, and then I'm going to put a close bracket. You see how it's closed off, and now it has calculated for me every instance of the words that have been used. So this is total tokens, i.e. how many individual lexical items have been there. Now, if you want to be really clever, take a little look at the back of your document. Remember we said we had 513 different words. So I'm going to put into here total types. Then we're going to have 513. So what we can now do is a thing called the type token ratio, which is equal to, now here we get clever, equals types, whoops, I did the wrong one, let's go back, equals that, backslash that, and we have here type token ratio. Well, whether you are a big fan of type token ratios or not, all I'm suggesting here is that you have a way of taking some data and giving yourself a numeric value which you can then use in the future to measure any changes over time with your client. So if I were to do this again for another couple of weeks sample in say 6 months time, I could do this whole process and try again and see whether there's some changes in these numbers. So that's using docs to get myself all the different types of word used, and then using the spreadsheet to calculate some figures here for the totals by just using some of the features that you can find in Google Doc spreadsheet. The same would go for if we were using LibreOffice. Let me get myself a new document, spreadsheet, highlight, copy. Now when we go back to here, paste, I do unformatted text. It gives me a little reminder here, and the same thing here. We've just now got all those figures there. Once again, we can use equals sum. Now this is less smart, so I'm just going to go there. See how I'm just filling in, and you'll see how it's giving me the number down here. Once more, I can use Control and copy, and then paste the formula into the different locations, and then finally equals sum. And you see we have the same there as well. And if we wanted, we could do the same thing with Microsoft Excel. Cutting and pasting is another way that we can leverage some of the features of Realize Language to get more information. So for example, if I go to the words here, and you'll see that I've got known words, pre-stored words, here we go. What I might want to say is, it would be interesting for me to see from all these words that my client has here, what parts of speech are being used here. Now we know that in the analysis, when we look at the parts of speech, what it's doing is it tells me the numbers, but not the specific words. And when we go to manage goals and the word groups, this word group here, again, is giving me some of those words, but remember, it's matching it against a target set. and it's not quite what I want. It's not just giving me, all I want is a list of all these words here that are known, pre-stored, and I want to see them by part of speech. So what I'm going to do here is a little bit like I did before. I am going to highlight, and then I'm going to copy. Now I'm going to go to the analysis section and the manage goals. But this time I'm going to create myself a new list, and this is Jacob's words today. When I click, I can do right click and paste. And what we've got here is all this data sits in here. And you'll notice that there are numbers in there as well, but ignore the numbers because it really doesn't matter. And I'm going to save that list. And you'll see here that we get all the numbers that are in there. But if I go to the word groups, if we ignore the numbers, what you've now got is all that vocabulary is showing as part of speech. So if I say, I want to see all the adjectives that my client is using, it's there. And you'll see it's full with all the adjectives. They're there. Adverbs, questions, phrases. There are none. Prepositions. So let's go back to where we have adjectives here. And what I'm going to do is highlight everything and copy. And now I'm going to go back to my untitled document that I had before. And now I'm going to click and give myself adjectives. And once more, I can do paste without formatting. So now we've actually got adjectives here. And I'm going to do a double click. And I'm just going to flip right between them and now do adverbs. So what I'm doing is using the copy paste function, and it would have been better if I'd have actually put in there adverbs and spelt it correctly. And the same again here. Conjunctions. Almost seems a shame to just do 3. Let's do pronouns. Much more interesting. Copy. Pronouns. And once more. Paste without formatting. So what I'm building up here is a breakdown by part of speech. And here's what we can also do. I can put that highlight and then tools and word count. And what this now does is gives me a breakdown of what's highlighted. And so you can see here words 46 of 610, but what it's doing is saying you've highlighted 46 words there. So I'm just going to put 46. Same with the adverbs. 25. And just for completion, I will do the pronouns here so that we can say we've checked them all. And we could do this then for all of those words that are in here. So that's using cut and paste so that you can take the data from here, known, pre-stored words, you copy it to the analysis and paste it into a new target word list, and then it shows up here as a breakdown by part of speech of all the words that you were looking at over here in your word list. If you want to take this a step further and you're using Microsoft Excel, there's a nice feature that helps you create charts. And so what I did was I then collected all the rest of the data here. So you can see I've filled all these in. And then in Microsoft Excel, I actually put in here the parts of speech. So I typed that in and then entered the numbers for it. If you then highlight all these in Microsoft Excel and then go to Insert, Excel has this feature called Recommended Charts. And if you've never tried this, it's really quite cool. But if you highlight the data there and do Recommended Charts, the system itself looks at the data and says, hey, we can make a chart out of this. How would you like it to look? One of my favorites here is the pie chart. So if I click on that and say OK, you'll see here that what happens is I can create a splendid pie chart here. There we go. And then we can edit it. And we have a representation there of how everything is by part of speech. You can, in fact, change the elements here. So I'm going to put in data labels. So here you'll see now it's added in the numbers, but if I want to do more than that, you can do best fit, data call out. There's another interesting way to do it. Do it that way. But it certainly is worth exploring Microsoft Excel and this feature it has. And then when you've got those, you'll see I can choose here different ways. There we go. As I scan along the top, you can find the one you like. That's pretty cool. Let's do that one. Then go back and modify as outside. There we go. So take a look at using Excel, and all you have to do is to put in a column of parts of speech, column with the numbers, and then you'll get this type of chart that is created automatically by the spreadsheet itself. If you're using LibreOffice, you can do something very similar. I've set up a table here, so the same information is in here by part of speech, and the same idea is that I can highlight everything that's in there, and there is a insert chart option here that I can click on, and the system will then look at giving you a type of chart. So here's the one there, but you could do a bar chart, and there's a pie chart there as well. Exploded pie charts as well, but let's just go here. And then we can edit various parts of it, but I just wanted you to be aware that I finished there. Okay, just to be aware that you can use, there we go, you can use LibreOffice to create these pie charts or other charts in the same way that you do with Microsoft Excel. So now I'm going to take a look at analyzing some sentences by using the log and again some cut and paste facilities. And to do this, I'm just going to change to a different client here. Also just demonstrate how you can do that. So if I go to manage, you'll see I have another client here. So I'm just going to switch to the other client. And again, you can have multiple clients in the system at any time. And this one is someone called Betty Beta. And again, you'll see that it's some old data here, but for illustration purposes, this will be just fine. So now I'm going to go to the log section. And in the log section here, remember I said that we can skip back through different time periods. But what I want you to see here as well is that we're also looking at a wider data set here from April 3rd to October 13th. And what I want to do is to show you how we can use this piece here in order to look at some sentences and think a little bit about mean length of utterance. So you'll see that there's a lot of information here, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this set for what's called graphic layout, but I'm going to do hide details. And when you hide the details, you can see here that the utterances here become much simpler and much easier to see. And what I'm going to do is to click here, and I'm just going to go highlight again like we have been doing, and then copy. And then we'll try again with, let's go for Google Docs here. And once more, I'm going to do edit and paste without formatting. So now you'll see that I have the date here, and you'll see that I also have the words. But what I'm going to do now is look at the words and see if I can work out basically what the sentences are. So I wish there was some way to be, and you can see here sure has been spelled out. I'm going to do that. Okay, so now you'll see I've now got myself a sentence. We just tidied up a little bit. If I want, I could perhaps put this here with an underline to say that the word sure there was spelled. I want to do that. And then maybe the next one, that's not something they can't fix. And what you'll see here is we can just go through step by step looking at these and then start counting there at the end how many words there are in this system, in this sentence, and you'll see how what we end up with is a list of sentences looking at the MLU. So this one here, I wish there was some way to be, I wish there was some way to be sure. So 8 words, that, and a contraction 2, not something they can't contraction fix. So that's another 8. And again, because remember there's 2 contractions there that we're counting. So we could do this for all the data in there. And really, if you can collect about 50 such sentences, that's a good measure of the MLUs for the sentences. So you can collect all these sentences here, gather them together, add all the numbers, divide by the number of sentences, and you get the mean length of a sentence. And it's a fairly good measure, provided you get 50 or more sentences out of your data set. If you want to do something more sophisticated than this, we can go back to the data here. You'll see how it's in little details in there. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually change this so that I can go to the, it's called the full layout. You'll notice now I'm getting even more information. So I'm going to do the same again. I'm going to copy this. And then this time, let's try going to, let's try Microsoft Excel, get myself a new one, and I'm going to paste. And now you'll see that I've got information here, not just about the codes here and the words, but we've got time data as well. And I'm just going to take that out. I can delete that because I'm really just interested in getting some time data. And so if we look at the same one, I wish there was some way to be sure. Okay, so I'm just going to do I'm just going to put the sentence in there, because what I want to do there is to start looking at getting some more information. And what I'm going to do here is insert a column. And now I'm going to do a little formula where I'm going to put equals. And that's the time at which we finished. Subtract time at which we start. And you'll see that we now have not only the sentence, I wish there was some way to be sure, but we've also got the time it took there as well. And that's something they can't fix. Okay, that's not something they can't fix. And a return. And then what we can do here, just put a little gap in here so I can see that. And then it's equal to when did we finish minus when did we start. And as I did previously, we can start looking at the sentences, but if you use a spreadsheet this time, and this will also work with LibreOffice and with Google Sheets, and then you not only get the words, that you also get the times as well. And if you get the words and the times, you can now start looking at getting things like words per minute. So now we've got a words per minute score in there. Previous to that, we were looking at an MLU score. And then if we think even further back, we were getting type scores, token scores to get type token ratios. And what I want you to take away from that is just the notion that if we use some of these third-party applications that are out there, we can get the data that we're using here and copy and paste things that are available to us to enhance the type of analysis that we're currently doing. And finally, what do I hope you can take away from this presentation? First, I hope that you can use the tools within Realize Language to create reports of different types, and using those snapshots and report generators to generate those graphics internally that you can then copy and paste into other documents. Secondly, I also hope you take away the idea that you can use Microsoft, Google, and LibreOffice products to enhance the sorts of analyses that you can do, and that these analyses will enable you to create measures such as a type token ratio, mean length of utterance, words per minute, and maybe use these as baselines in tracking your client's performance over time. And so thank you for attending. Thank you for taking the time out to listen to me. And if you should have any questions at all after this, you can always contact me at russellcross@prentrom.com. Thank you all very much.